Hey everybody, Coach Lindsay here. I just had an impromptu conversation with one of my clients, and she was gracious enough to allow me to hit record. What she was sharing is her experience based on the coaching that we've been doing together and some of the discoveries that are coming up for her, and how she's learning to self coach herself and recognize and become aware of how she is thinking and feeling throughout the course of the day, and therefore understanding the reason behind why she takes the actions that she is taking, and being able to sit with those emotions and process those emotions and become curious with those emotions and how it's impacting both her personal life and her professional life. So, again, gracious enough to let me record this session and share it with all of you so that you can see the power and the impact of coaching. This was just after our first session. So that shows you how transformational this work can be. I hope you enjoy. Some of what you're saying right now, I think is so critical and key for people to understand. So I would love for you to just like briefly recap what you just said based on
Sure.
some of the coaching that we've been doing, because I think other people will start to understand, what does this actually do for me? And then how does that help me to show up inside of business, not just your
Mhm.
personal life, but also your career? How does that make a shift for you? So I'd love you to
Oh,
share a little bit more about what you just said.
sure. I think honestly, for the career portion of it, I think if I can get good at this framework that we were talking about of having this core of being able to take a step back from any given situation, especially when you're starting to feel, as we talked about, picking up on all the emotions around you, of going back to the core of what are the facts here? What do I really know? And then what am I layering on top of that with my perceptions of feeling? And what is my brain telling me that unfortunately may or may not be accurate? It may be accurate. There might be a lot of emotion going on, but being able to recognize that and to be able to understand how that's affecting what I'm doing, it's just vital, I think, to be able to help to one, be able to get your work done professionally, empathetically, because it's important to be empathetic, but there has to be the recognition of, to get things done and get them done appropriately, you kind of have to separate out the facts from the emotions, the things, the thoughts that creates that might not be telling you accurately what needs to be done. I appreciate the conversation that we had to be able to recognize that, because it's not obvious, and it's not something that you can just instantly start doing. It's something that you have to pay attention to and recognize that you're okay. I'm off. I remember we talked about urgency.
Mhm.
Why am I feeling this sense of urgency? Now, there's a legitimate timing issue for certain things. I mean, obviously, in this business, we do have hard and fast deadlines for certain things, or if there are things happening. But that sense of urgency may not be helping the situation when there's something that you need to get done, and there's plenty of time to get it done. And the urgency may lead to making mistakes, which is really funny because I found something this week that I had done that I had never done before, that was very seemingly innocent. I mean, it wasn't a big deal, but it forced me to have to redo something. And again, it was like, oh yeah, that's what Lindsay was talking about. That's what she was talking about.
But isn't it interesting that it's that awareness step that I think
Yes.
we all want to skip, because we're ready to, once we see that there's like, oh, I'm feeling this urgency, and that's coming from what I'm choosing to think about the situation that's happening. I want to immediately fix it.
Yep.
Now that I know that it's there, I just want to fix it. And we don't spend enough time just sitting in the awareness of like, oh, okay, this is what urgency feels like.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. I just went back and had to fix this. Let me sit there and think about it for a second. Oh, wait, when I did this thing, I was actually acting from urgency. That's what we were talking about. Now I'm making the connection, right? You're still in the awareness phase. You're not even trying to necessarily change it yet. You're
No,
just becoming aware of when it happens. But we want to skip that part
yes, because it's
because
hard.
that it's hard and it feels like a waste of time
Right. Well, yeah,
because
because
ultimately,
it's counterintuitive. Like when you're urgent, you're like, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do
right,
this now, instead of like, okay, do you, what's going on here? Can I take a step back? Can I, what am I feeling? I'm uncomfortable. Oh, I hate it when I'm uncomfortable. And then when you're uncomfortable, the first thing you want to do is make that discomfort go away. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to live with that discomfort for a little bit to kind of let it talk to you, to say what's driving it. And so that, like you
let's see,
said,
yeah.
it's not just being aware of it, it takes practice. And until you get good at that, I mean, I'm not even ready for the next step yet.
Yeah. I love the question, like when you're sitting there and you're experiencing it, it's like, what is this trying to teach me right now?
Mhm,
What is this discomfort trying to teach me about the pattern that I have been practicing forever?
yes.
What am I supposed to learn in this moment versus I don't want to feel this discomfort. I'm going to do something else that's going to cover up that discomfort so that I don't have to feel it anymore. But
Mhm.
sitting with the discomfort and being like, what are you trying to teach me right now?
Yeah, and I remember doing this with my son, switching over to personal life for a moment. My son had a really, really difficult tactile thing where he did not want to be wet when he was in his regular clothes. Give him a bath, he was happy, but he hated it when his clothes got wet without his choice. And he had a field trip to go to this stream that they were going to be looking for all sorts of aquatic, insects and plants and things like that. And so he was going to have to get in that wade in this creek in his regular
Mm-hmm.
clothes. And so I volunteered to go along, and and I kind of pulled him back a little bit. I'm like, all right, you're going to be uncomfortable. You're not going to like the feeling of this at first at all. And unfortunately, to experience this, you're going to have to sit with this and deal with this for a little bit. And I said, and then, then you can move on. And he actually did really, really well. I mean, it was tough again when we were done with the field trip, and he like instantly wanted to be dry. And it was like, doesn't work quite that way, but it was so
Mm-hmm.
much easier for me because I wasn't the one experiencing it,
Yeah.
but it allowed, and he doesn't, if he has issues with it, it's very minor now. And I hope that it's because of that. Okay, how do you break down this situation into a manageable chunk, of,
Yeah.
okay, I can be uncomfortable, but maybe not for a super long time if I know that there's another way. So yes, I guess when I think about it, I've been thinking about this for a long time, but it's so easy to see it in others as opposed to look at it in yourself and say, oh, wow, I could benefit from that approach sometimes too.
Absolutely. Right. That whole lesson is really about teaching yourself and teaching others about how can you feel safe when you're feeling the discomfort. Like
Mhm.
how did you help he now has that understanding of I can be totally uncomfortable, but I'm not going to die, right? Our brains don't know the difference between real threat and discomfort. They think they're kind of the same thing.
Mhm.
And so that whole process of like, you can be uncomfortable and work your way through it, and you can still be safe and get to the other side And you might again try to get yourself out of that situation and change your circumstance and put some dry clothes on or do whatever, but in the moment you're no longer feeling as though it's truly threatening. And that can be applied to literally everything that we
Mhm.
experience. But a lot of people aren't taught that. Quite frankly, I was never taught that as a child. And so I think that you also have a lot of, adults running around in the world that haven't gone through this experience of learning it themselves, and they weren't taught it by somebody at an early age where they could learn how to self-regulate. So you've got a bunch of adults that are running around at different levels of understanding around this, and we try to
Mhm.
interact with each other. And no wonder it can be so hard to communicate, whether it's
Yeah.
in your personal life or at work, right? We're just a bunch of adults running around that are as good as the amount of self healing that we've learned how to do.
Well, and the thing is it's not necessarily appropriate to bring out all your emotional things at work because we have a job to do, and we have things to do, but but you have no idea what somebody else is experiencing, with
None.
what's driving, and that's where you might pick up on that there's something going on. Like, yeah, I can feel when there's tension and I can feel when there's emotion and things like that, but I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I always assume it's my fault because that's a product of upbringing, but
And isn't it so interesting? Because quite frankly, it is very rarely about you.
no,
Right.
that is,
Right.
yes.
Yesterday, Corey and I had this moment um, where I was communicating something with him, and I was telling him how I was talking about my ADD and how I wanted to handle it. And the way that he responded was he had a thought based on what I was saying about something that he wanted to do within his business
Mhm.
and how he was starting to think about, building wealth and responsibility and all this stuff, right? He was
Mhm.
having his own little narrative bubble that was going on, and I'm talking to him about my ADHD and how I want to manage it. And when he said something to me, I was like immediately triggered. And the way I responded was like, what the hell are you talking about? And he's like, whoa, 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 what are you talking about? So we all have our own things going on, and he's now receiving this energy from me, and it actually has nothing to do with him, right? It has
Yeah.
everything to do with me. But now, I mean, we went through that interaction and he was like, and I was like, hold up, I'm sorry. I don't even know if I said I was sorry. I'm sorry. um but I was like, that was all about me. The way that I just received what you said had nothing to do with the words coming out of your mouth, the facts. It had everything to do with the way that I interpreted what you just said. And we don't do that enough when we're
Mhm.
having interactions with other people. And if we did, it would start to normalize whatever it is that we're experiencing, right? It would start to create this communication amongst humans that
Mhm.
allows you to be able to own your own stuff and for them to own their stuff and not have it because it's almost impossible to stop it from happening,
Yeah.
right? But if somebody's experiencing something, 99% of the time it has nothing to do with you.
And
Nothing.
and you have to repeat it over and over and over. I guess that's another thing, first comes awareness, then comes probably doesn't have anything to do with you. What's going on over there? Again, back to the facts. But
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
even if you're good at this,
correct.
it's still going to be a challenge.
You're still a human, You're still a human that has had past experiences
Mhm.
that occasionally will trigger you to repeat a thought that you have thought before, because in some way, shape, or form, that thought kept you safe. So at one point in time, you needed that thought to keep you safe, but maybe you don't need it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very powerful and very true, and it's and not everybody is open to approaching communication at that level.
Yeah.
And so again,
Yep.
what can I control? I can control myself. I can't control my thoughts yet. Maybe never will be able to. But if I can learn when they're activating to be aware of them,
Mm-hmm.
and then figure out, how to separate that out from what needs to be done so that I can be clear headed and hopefully do the best job I can, whether it's personal or
Mm-hmm.
professional. I mean, but it's so hard to untangle that.
Well, and again, you're at phase one,
Right.
awareness, right? And this part of the process is not a quick process. And so phase number two is once we get the awareness thing down, and that's never going to stop. You ultimately just
Right.
layer phase two on top of it, but you
Mhm.
can't get through phase one quickly. So phase one, awareness. Phase
Yep.
two is, okay, now that we're aware, what are some of the thoughts that we want to be thinking on purpose? So when we have those unconscious thoughts and we notice the vibration in our body and the emotion that shows up,
Mhm.
right? That's the awareness piece. When you feel urgency,
Mhm.
now you've got that little bell that goes off and you're like, ooh, I'm experiencing urgency right now. Well, why am I feeling urgency? What is the thought that I'm thinking? Okay, now I'm becoming aware of my unconscious thoughts. What do I want to be thinking instead? And what will that create as an emotion for me?
Mhm.
Right. So that's step number two, is
I
now
wrote
taking
it down.
yourself, yeah, into that conscious side of
Right.
what do I want to be thinking instead? And then you wake up in the morning and you have, a little laundry list of go-to thoughts that
Mhm.
you want to conjure on a daily basis. And you keep them front and center to remind you shit like, we can do hard things.
Mhm.
This is the most important time that I can take. If your brain's going to the place of, I don't have time for this, it's more like, and again, for you, it could be whatever. For me, it's, this is the most important time I could take right now.
Mhm. Yeah, and that sounds wonderful. I'll be working on the awareness for a while, but it's nice to catch a glimpse of that second step to
Mm-hmm.
even start having that centering moment, once a day to say, you know, but then I need to figure out what the thoughts are that I do want to be encouraging in myself, and what I want that to look like, you
Yeah.
know, because I always like to be shooting towards something.
We all like a goal.
I
We all
do,
like to know
yeah.
that this is going to turn into something.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, and the thing is quite frankly, life is just much too short to not try to keep on. I don't know if it's self-actualization, whatever theory
Yeah.
that you want to, ascribe to it, but the awareness in general, self-awareness, and keep building those skills. Because for one
Mm-hmm.
thing, I want them for myself, but I want to be able to teach them to the others that I love. So,
Yeah, because the experience that we have in the world is all controlled by the quality of the thoughts that we have and the quality of the emotions that we conjure.
mhm,
Right? That's what our experience, that's how we experience the world around us. And
absolutely.
if we can raise that vibration, holy moly, watch out, world.
Absolutely. So I will
Yeah.
continue on this path
Super
to
cool.
do my part.
Yeah. Love it. Absolutely love it.